What's going on, guys? Magdowan here. Today I'd like to share with you my build guide and overview for the Death's Oath Vol Caustic Arrow Occultist in the Sanctum League. If you enjoyed the music at the beginning, please do hit the like and subscribe button. I'm slowly clawing my way up to 1,000, and so a big thank you to all the new folks that have jumped aboard in the last 30 days or so. And now let's get into the build. Before we get into the skill tree and all of that, I did want to say this is not meant to be a hyper-optimized version of the build. This is just the way that I have it set up that has worked really well for me for the content that I enjoy. And there might be things about it that you would change based on the content that you're playing or your playstyle. And you'll be happy to know the build is very forgiving in terms of letting you change stuff around and customize it to your own unique take. And I think that's one of the real strengths of the build. The addition of Vol Caustic Arrow also rounds things out and allows it to be even more forgiving because you have a lot more on-demand damage. We can be a lot safer when we're fighting Harbingers or Essences by dropping the AoE on the ground ahead of time and letting stuff just die to it. And it'll combine with your explosions and make things, like I said, much safer than I remember the build being in previous iterations that I had played in leagues past. And here's my character screen. As you can see, defenses are very sparse. We're relying on our Chaos Res and Elemental Res to carry us here, and the movement speed that we have and the explosions and basically just not allowing mobs to get to us is the way that we stay alive, and it hasn't been a big issue for me. And so let's jump into the Pantheon here real quick. I am using Soul of the Brine King and Soul of Aberoth, and then of course for bandits I killed both of them. Now I leveled the build initially as my league starter. I was doing Poisonous Concoction, and that really transitioned pretty well into this build. I was able to use a lot of the gear and just kind of flip it over, and it allowed me to take more time and build up currency to get more specific items for this build. And so I would recommend that if you're leveling from scratch. And let's jump into the skill tree then, and we'll take a look at it. Alright, let's start with the Ascendancy. We're going to take Unholy Authority, Profane Bloom for the explosions, Withering Presence, and Void Beacon. And then on the tree itself, we're going to come up through here and grab some life and mana and some AoE. And then if you come up here, this is the first kind of change I've made. Normally you would use a Transcendent Mind in this slot, but I have an Intuitive Leap. And that is so that we can grab some AoE for the Herald as well as some damage. And then over here, we're going to get some Recoup going. And I would say Recoup is probably my favorite defensive mechanic in the game. You really do notice it, even just with this 1 point. Having it allocated really smooths out the build, eliminates a lot of the one-shots. Can't recommend it enough. And then if you come down here, you will need a Glorious Vanity with the line that has Zabaqua in it so that we can get Divine Flesh. That is our main defensive mechanic, along with the Recoup and some on-kill life regeneration and recovery. And then we're going to come up through here. If you need stats, you can grab them there. And then here's the first cluster setup. For the large, we've got Unholy Grace, Touch of Cruelty, and Unwaveringly Evil. And then for the medium, we've got Unwaveringly Evil and Flow of Life, and then just a jewel to round things out. I've got my Corrupted Blood immunity here. For the other medium, Brush with Death, which you really do need to have one instance of this at least. And then Flow of Life, and another jewel to just kind of round things out. And then coming down here, we're going to get Reservation Mastery, Chaos Mastery for damage. Grab a little bit of Strength and some life here. And then come on down through, and if you need it, you can grab Chaos Res and Max Chaos Res here. If you do not need this, you could just as easily come over this way and grab Growth and Decay for some extra damage. Then we're going to come down here, and here's another jewel slot. And we're also going to grab some life here so we can get the Mastery. And then we're going to slide through this area here so that we can get some more life. And then come down here to the last Chaos Mastery section. And then over here, we're going to take the Evasion Mastery. Mostly for the life and the movement speed, but the extra evasion doesn't hurt. And then another reservation thing here. And then this is the other change that I've made to the build. You could use an Intuitive Leap down here if you wanted, or you could just use this for a regular jewel slot. In this case, I'm using Impossible Escape so that I can come over here and grab Charge Generation as well as Hired Killer, which is the other main node that we've got for defense that really does a lot of work and rounds things out for me. There's a lot of stuff you could do in lieu of this, but I have found that this works pretty well for me. And then lastly, we'll come over here, and this is the other cluster setup that I have. Here's my Watcher's Eye. It's got one good mod on it. You could obviously get way better. and then Touch of Cruelty, Wicked Paw, and Unholy Grace on the large. And then I'm using a Megalomaniac. You could just use another copy of one of the medium clusters that I have up there, or you could try and find one similar to this. In my case, I have Flow of Life, Unwaveringly Evil, and Towering Threat, just for a little bit more AoE and to round things out. And that's basically the tree. There's tons of stuff that you could do to mess around with it. You can stack a bunch of those, what are they, Grand Spectrum jewels that allow you to get, you can get life and charges and whatever. You could try and get a Forbidden Flame and Flesh, stuff like that. There's a lot of ways that you could alter this tree to suit your playstyle. You could get more life if you need it. You could go more into evasion, so on and so forth. And so let's go on over and take a look at the gear. All right, we'll take a look at the bow first. You don't have to have the implicit or the enchant, but they're certainly nice to have. Otherwise, this is a pretty standard bow for the build. You can look up a guide. There's tons of them out there for how to craft one yourself if you are budget-minded. Otherwise, just buy one off trade, as I have. And then for our left ring, we're going to use a magic ring, and we're going to have minimum frenzy charges, a little bit of life, and some chaos damage. And that is because we're running Verdi's Veil, and we want to take advantage of having no extra damage inflicted on us from critical strikes. And then we're going to run Impresence with Despair as the free aura, and we're going to anoint Corruption on there. And then on the other ring, we need Aspect of the Spider, and then you just fill out whatever other stats you need. I've got some mana cost reduction on there. You don't have to have that, but it does smooth things out a little bit. Chest piece, obviously Death's Oath. You can get one with a damage corrupted implicit, which is very nice. I've just got the standard one here with good rolls so that I could fill out my dexterity. And then for gloves, we're going to wear Azanos Gentle Touch. And again, here you can get some pretty tasty corrupts if you're willing to spend for them. For the belt, we're just filling out stats here and grabbing some additional flask charges gained. You can go with a Stygian Vice and get some extra power there if you want to spend a little bit more. And then these are actually the boots that I was using for my Poisonous Concoction build, but gives us a little bit of Onslaught as well as some Chaos Res, and it helped me fill out stuff for the build, but you could certainly go for an armor base and get similar stats and be better off. And then our quiver is, again, pretty standard for the build. Attack speed on the implicit, and then some damage over time multi. And then we just fill out a little bit of res and some life. And then for flasks, I'm doing a Dying Sun, and then we're going to get some armor and some phasing, as well as some additional attack speed. And then Bottled Faith for extra damage when we're killing bosses, and it's just a great flask all around. And then obviously Quicksilver for move speed. And then let's real quickly talk about the gems. So here we've got Empower level 4, and then we're going to do our Caustic Arrow. Then we've got Awakened Vicious Projectiles, and then Swift Affliction. You could do Awaken for that as well. And then Concentrated Effect. And Void Manipulation. Again, you could do an Awakened version of this if you want to add a little bit more damage. And then in the helmet, I have Blasphemy linked with Malevolence. And then here's my Herald of Ash, as well as Despair. I went with the Divergent because the quality gives you a little bit more area of effect. And then in the chest piece, we're running Efficacy, as well as Awakened Void Manipulation, Awakened Increased Area of Effect. That's where a fair amount of the money went. And I don't know if they've come down in price now, but this was a huge damage increase to the build, so don't underestimate the power of this gem. And then we've got a Life Tap in there, as well as Awakened Swift Affliction and Less Duration. And then in the gloves, we've got room for a Portal, and we've got Life Tap in there, linked with Phase Run and Withering Step. And finally, in the boots, we've got Defiance Banner. You could go for an Anomalous and get some added benefit there, but I just have a regular one. And then Vitality and Second Wind, as well as Dash. And that is about it for the skills and gems, as well as all the gear. Alright, last thing we'll do here is just a quick map. Fortune favors the brave, blue altars. And we'll just kind of go straight to the boss so you can see real quickly how the build runs, and I can tell you exactly what I'm doing. So I'm just going to do the Quicksilver and start running through stuff. And as you can see, most of it should just blow up as we're going by. You can obviously grab the shrines if you want. Vol Caustic Arrow will take care of any of the stragglers. Normally I would stop and do that essence, but for these purposes, we're just going to run on through. Same thing with the altars. Obviously, you can stop and get those. And any big mobs like that, we'll just give them a quick caustic arrow, and that'll finish them off. On through here. And we'll make our way into the boss room. We're going to Withering Step, and we're going to drop the Vol Caustic Arrow on him. That's the boss. And then, obviously, run through the rest of the map, clear everything out, and you're on to the next one. Alright, that's about all I have for you guys today. I will throw a POB in the description below, though I'm not going to go through and check all the boxes and whatever, but all the gear will be on there, and you can take a look at the tree. And remember, you can take the build a lot further than what I did here. You could grab Flesh and Flame Jewels with Heart of Destruction or something, scale the AoE a bunch. You could try the Explodey Flask. You could optimize your tree. You could just buy outright better gear than what I have with more chaos damage, more dot multi. You could go for juicy implicits on a bunch of pieces of gear. You could drop Verdi's Veil entirely and go with a juicy rare helm and use 2 rare rings with a bunch more dot multi, etc. There's lots of growth that you can do with the build if you want to take it further than what I did here. But for what it is, it's been one of the most fun builds I've ever played. Vol Caustic Arrow really rounds it out, and I think you should give it a shot if you haven't played it before. So yeah, I hope you guys found the video interesting, and I will be back with another farming video very soon, and I will see you then. I appreciate you.